You with the one and only boxing guru. For this episode, we're going to focus in on the big fight that went down last night. Bud Crawford versus Errol the True Spence, in my opinion. Because I had this fight going real easy for Errol the True Spence. I even made a video that Bud Crawford had a 25% chance of winning the fight against Errol the True Spence. Even at 25%, that still gives you an opportunity to win the fight. I was just saying, in my opinion, from the boxing expert I am, and basing it on the two fighters, that Errol had a better chances of winning the fight based on how both fighters fight each other, based on the style matchup and how they fight each other. In my opinion, from the beginning of the fight, Errol did what was right. He came out with a double jab. He pushed Bud back, like I had predicted in my predictions before the fight, because I knew Bud couldn't get away from Errol once Errol used the double jab and came in with a solid defense. That was the whole thing that his head trainer, Derek James, had kept saying throughout the media workout and different things of that nature, that he had to be technically sound. What he mean by that was, once you double jab, you got to bring your hands back, because Bud was looking to counter. But Errol did it successfully in the first round. That's why all the three scorecard judges gave Errol not the victory, but the round, scored that round in his favor. So after that, Errol seemed like he went against the game plan. He didn't understand. Even in the corners, Derek James kept telling him to move his head off the line. You know, not one single jab. You got to double jab your way in. It just seemed like something just wasn't right the whole night with Errol the True Spence. And like I said, that goes to the reflection of that 25% chance I gave you, because everybody, even the whole boxing world, whoever saw Errol Spence fight, know he wasn't fighting up to his capabilities. Some people might try the naysayers or the people who really don't understand boxing is, oh, well, Bud is a different animal. Bud the one that caused Errol not to do this or do that. But if you look at Bud fight against Errol real carefully, Bud didn't do nothing real special. What I mean by that is, he just used a jab. He countered Errol when he came in, because Errol was doing amateur type stuff that Errol Spence normally doesn't do. Errol usually give you feints, he double jab. So Bud was just sitting back countering. Bud didn't really move after the first round. He just stepped around. Errol balance was all off. So Bud was just throwing punches. And with Errol being so lackadaisical on defense, he was just getting hit by everything Bud threw. So it wasn't no special effects on what Bud was doing the whole fight. It was just amazing how Errol Spence looked, in my opinion. It looked like he was a shell of himself. He looked like a shot fighter. You know, if you go back to some of the classical fighters back in the 70s and 80s, after they took so many punches and had so many grueling fights, that's how they became. If you look at when Ali fought Larry Holmes for the last time, when he fought Trevor Burbick, when you saw Mike Tyson, or when you saw Roy Jones push it past the limit, you know, they didn't have the same dynamic boxing stance. It's like the spirit of them was gone, you know, so it was like they wasn't whole again. So that's what I'm saying about the fight, far as with Bud, how he won this fight. It seemed like he won it on default because of what was left in Errol. I don't know if Errol depleted that self from, you know, with being off or whatever, but it just seemed like wasn't nothing registering, because Derek James was giving him excellent corner advice. It's just like Errol couldn't do it or wouldn't do it or something. It was just amazing how the fight unfolded. It's no knock to Bud, but like I said, Bud didn't have no real special effects last night, you know, but, you know, a lot of his fans ain't gonna be able to see it like that, but you gotta watch the fight carefully. And me, that's why I never like betting on fights, really, because You know, when you get an outcome like this, I'm not a sore loser, or people generally not a sore loser. They just want their horse or their team to come out and play like they normally do, or at least go through the motions of they playing like they normally do. I know some fighters gonna counter you and different things of that nature, but when Errol was just getting beat by a basic timing jab, and he showed you in the first round that double jab can push Bud back. He had pushed Bud around the ring that first round. So that showed me everything that I had forecast and said was real, because he showed it. He showed it in spurts, but the first round was the pivotal round for Errol, because that was not a dominating round, because Errol didn't come out full blazing, even though he came forward, but he didn't come out full blazing like he normally does. Plus, that's what he was supposed to do to make Bud fight. But when he did turn it up, he showed you he could push Bud around that ring. And then, like I said, his defense, his lack of defense, just keeping his hands down, getting hit with every shot that Bud threw. Bud would close his eyes and just throw punches and land. So that shows you that for this to be the fight of the decade, the fight of the century, nowhere near it. This is an embarrassment to the sport of boxing, how a unified champion fights, you know, because like I said, from the technical standpoint, I'm a fan of Errol Spence. I'm here to help Errol, you know, because I don't have to be on a bandwagon, a delusional mindset from it, because I like Errol. I like Bud too. I like boxing overall better than both of them. But from a high standpoint of boxing, this was terrible last night. It was horrible. Even Antonio Tarver, who's one of the great personality in boxing, he said the same thing. You know, it's an embarrassment. You know, if you watch him and Roy Jones fight when they fought, it's more skillful, it's more thinking. You know, with this fight, oh, it was just a beatdown. It was just 75-25%, like I predicted. It's just the boxing guys flipped it. But I made a bold prediction that a 75-25 prediction is going to be a dominant, easy fight. So I knew that, but they flipped it from Errol to Bud. So you have to understand the mindset that I'm telling you and trying to get you to understand the points of boxing. That's why a lot of times you don't really want to bet on it, because, you know, it leaves a bad taste for the sport. Because when you have a 3-belt divisional champ, not divisional, but 3-belt champ in Errol Spence, and he fought like he did, you know, it was just horrible. It was horrible. When the last time you saw 2 A-level fighters with one get dominated like that? Even with Pacquiao and Mayweather, it wasn't no domination like that. The defense was more tighter. Them boys fought at a even, epic flow, but Floyd had to show you he was more masterful. So this fight don't even compare to that, man. This fight was like I said, 75-25 when I made that bold prediction. I knew it was, but for some reason, I don't know what Errol, if he fell from grace or what happened between the race, this mega fight between them, but he sure didn't look like the man that I know, that I see in his face. But like I said, you know, it's boxing. That's why I hate betting on it. I love the sport. But in my opinion, what Errol should do from this point on, one more fight and then be gone. I'm going to say it again. I think Errol should have one more fight and then be gone. The reason I say that is because Errol has accomplished a lot in the sport of boxing. I like Errol. I'm grateful for all the times he talked to me. This is no video to hate on him or throw shade on him. And because Errol is definitely a true gentleman of the sport. He's a nice guy. But, you know, one more fight, he should just be done, you know, because, you know, after looking at last night, whether you can say it's weight drain or whatever you can try to blame it on, I look at a fighter's technique. Technique is everything. If a fighter cannot protect himself, look sloppy like he did, his balance, his coordination, you know, he just didn't look right. He just didn't look the man that I was accustomed to seeing in Errol the True Spence. So with me, even if he put on 7 pounds of muscle and gain weight again, I just believe, sometimes it's time to call it quits, my friend. Like Sean Porter did. Sometimes it's best, to cash this last check out and move out the way. Because it's just going to get harder, especially up at 154. Them boys take more punches and they taller, more physical. So it's going to be very difficult, for that terrain as fighters. Sometimes you got to listen to what the boxing god tell individuals, especially in that square circle, especially in front of the whole world. There's nowhere to hide, like Bomac said. The truth had to be shown, and it definitely was shown last night. And I just believe once Errol take this next fight with Bud, whether win, lose, or draw, I just believe he should be ready to call it quits, because the wear and tear is definitely becoming apparent of training your body. Plus, at 34 years old, every fighter slows down. Even at 35, Bud was slow, in my opinion. His hands were still quicker than Errol's, but his reaction, that's why Errol had more success in the first round than Bud. And just imagine if he fight real aggressive type fighters who still young in their prime. So after they 1 or 2 fights, they got to be careful how they match up against certain fighters, like a Keith Thurman or somebody. But at that point, you can get 1 or 2 more fights, but he should be looking to throw the towel in. Maybe 1 or 2 more fights for Errol and Bud Crawford. 1 or 2 more fights, because at 35 years old, it ain't nowhere to go but downhill, especially if they gonna match you with some of the top people like Jamal Charlo or Tim Tszyu, those type of heavy hitters in the 154 division. So it's going to be very critical for them boys, because them boys is small. So, and the 154 division is kind of stacked with even top B-level fighters and C-level fighters. So it's definitely going to be intriguing to see how many fights left in them boys at the higher echelon. But for my opinion, Errol Spence definitely need to think about it, cash out 2 more fights, and just call it quits. Ain't nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? Take the rematch, get this last extra money, say it was weight drain, and however you come, and just hey, it's time to be at home with the wife and kids. I definitely like Errol Spence. This is just food for thought, just my opinion, because like I said, I picked him to win and I lost money. I typically don't bet on the fight, but I lost money on this just because I knew this was a 75 to 25% fight for Errol the True Spence if he would have double jabbed and kept his defense tight. That's all he had to do, because Bud was looking to counter strike. It was easy. But when you left your face in front of you, single jab and falling in, that's how Bud was able to capitalize. For this episode of Under the Microscope, I hate I was wrong for this fight. But it definitely wasn't on me, because I still believe I got it right, because it was a definitely domination fight as far as my prediction, as far as 75%. But I knew Errol could do it, but only him and God knows the truth. But from my boxing eye point, I seen it in the fight. The first round and later in some of the other rounds, Errol kept pulling back his technique. If you're already in the inside against Bud, you're supposed to stay on the inside. You're the better body work. You got to put your hands up and dig to the body. Bud don't even squint down and be digging to the body like Errol. But Errol will pull back, leave his face exposed. It was just terrible. It was just terrible, man. And that's why I feel so bad for him and feel so bad for the sport of boxing, because this fight was built up to be one of the best fights. But in my opinion, this was a bust, because everybody put up all this fuss, and then, like I said, Bud didn't do nothing spectacular. He just countered, jab, and threw punches. Errol ran right in there with his hands down and getting knocked around. So, yeah, it wasn't nothing special, but this is what happens in boxing. That's why I hate betting on the sport, because it hurts like this. But hopefully, Errol the True Spence realize a couple more fights, cash out, get as much money as he can, be at home with the family, and be a family man. These are the words for the one and only boxing guru for this episode. My thoughts on what happened last night from the big fight.